أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين، الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه العزيز: إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا. وقال الله عز وجل في شأن حبيبه مخبرا وآمرا: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابه يا حبيب الله. The infinite blessings and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have been descending upon us throughout the entire month of Ramadan. We are fortunate enough to be alive and to be chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek the blessings of the remaining days and nights of Ramadan. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to sincerely repent, give us the ability to sincerely turn to Him and to reform our heart and to reform our actions. And today is the 24th day of Ramadan, and this is also the night, the 25th night of Ramadan, inshallah, as is after Salat al-Maghrib, and therefore another potential night for the night of Qadr, for the night of power, for the night of destiny and decree. And therefore I urge you all, as I have been doing on the 23rd night as well as the 21st, to make sure that instead of watching TV and sitting down and spending time elsewhere, spend it in the worship and the zikr and the fikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this could be the night which could change your entire destiny and change your fortune as well. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to remember Him, to seek His forgiveness, to pray for ourselves, to pray for our family members, and more importantly, especially with the current climate that there is throughout the world, pray for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. Yesterday we discussed the 6th hijrah in the life of the Prophet ﷺ and how he showed us how to politically maneuver in the current climate that he was in. So teaching us political skills as well as social skills, moral skills, ethical skills and religious skills as well. And we learned how the long-term plan of the Prophet ﷺ was seen in the 6th year of Hijrah, when he went and he made the truce with the people of Quraysh, and they, to protect themselves and to protect their image, made that truce with them. However, the Muslims were triumphant, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the verse of the Quran that Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. Indeed, we have given you a great victory, a great conquest, a great triumph over those who do not believe. And this was a great victory for the Muslims and a great victory for Islam, because it was now recognized and Muslims were able to freely go in and out of the city of Makkah and also out of the entire Arabian Peninsula at that time as well. So we left yesterday with the agreement and the pact being made from the Prophet ﷺ and the people of Quraysh. Now we come to the 7th year of Hijrah. And this is immediately the very same day after 1 year has gone by, the same day the Prophet ﷺ made that agreement. 1 year onwards, the Prophet ﷺ returns back to Makkah. So originally he went to Makkah to do the Umrah, but he was prohibited and prevented from doing the Umrah. So then he slaughtered his hadi and then he returned back to Makkah and Medina as part of the agreement. And they could return in 1 year's time. So they returned back on the very same day after 1 year, and the Prophet ﷺ, he returned with 2,000 Sahaba Ikram. Originally it was just over 1,400, 1,500 Sahaba Ikram the last year, but as you know, with the agreement now, more and more Muslims were coming to Islam, and the tribe were coming and being listening to the message of Islam more openly. So now 2,000 2,000 Muslims have returned to Makkah al-Mukarramah as part of their agreement, as part of that pact and treaty, which would allow them to return to Makkah and perform the Hajj and also perform the Umrah as well. So inshallah, today we will discuss our 4 crucial points in the 7th year of Hijrah. The first is the return of the Prophet ﷺ to do qada of the Umrah that they missed. The second is the conversion of very, very prominent people in the 7th year of the Hijrah. And the third that we will discuss is the letters that the Prophet ﷺ sent worldwide, so internationally the message is being spread as well. And the fourth thing that we will discuss is the battle of Mu'tah as well. So these are the 4 things that hopefully, inshallah, will cover in this hour's lecture. So the Prophet ﷺ in the following year, on the very same day, has returned with 2,000 Sahaba Ikram, and he's there on the outskirts of the city of Makkah. And it's not just men that accompany the Prophet ﷺ. Remember, the previous year, the Prophet ﷺ took Muslims as well as non-Muslims as well. And that was a very, very savvy political move of the Prophet ﷺ. And similarly, in this year as well, the Prophet ﷺ, he goes with men as well as women as well. Men and women, both collectively, to remind the Quraysh that they're not here for war, they're not here for fighting or disputing, they're here just purely to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, it reminds us that the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala never just left the women and never just left the children at home, but he used to make them part of their message, part of the whole struggle of Islam as well. So when you need to go on Umrah or Hajj or any particular event, religious event, you should always take your family members and your children and your wife with you as well, because it's important for them to learn, important for them to see the struggle that Islam is going through and that you're going through as well to achieve this particular enlightenment and success in your life. So the Prophet ﷺ, he takes 2,000 Sahaba, men and women alike, and when they reach the outskirts of Makkah, the Prophet ﷺ, he leaves 100 horsemen outside the city of Makkah, and they are there equipped with weaponry as well. And this is not because the Prophet ﷺ was there with the intention to overthrow the Makkans or the Qurayshi tribe, or to instill fear into them or anything like that, but he was preparing, because he knew, due to the treachery of the Quraysh and the way that they had dealt with the Prophet ﷺ previously, every time they made a promise or they made a pact, they would constantly break those promises and pacts. So just because you have made a pact with somebody, you have made a treaty with somebody, doesn't mean that you become naive, because they're still human beings and they can still very easily break the pact and say, it's just the way the Jews of Medina, they broke the constitution, and other tribes would break the constitution and say, well, who is Muhammad? We don't care who this guy is. So the Prophet ﷺ, although he's keeping his side of the agreement and he's going there unarmed, he is still prepared just in case if something does turn sour and the Muslims are there and they do not become overrun or they do not be killed or anything like that. So the Prophet ﷺ has left 100 horsemen on the outside of the city of Makkah, and he is not allowed to come in, told them to remain outside. So he has planned, and he has planned just in case of anything that does go wrong. However, he doesn't tell them to come inside the city of Makkah. So when the Prophet ﷺ is entering into Makkah, Suhail, remember, who was the one who agreed the treaty with the Prophet ﷺ, the 5th and 6th messenger, that finally came from the Quraysh, he turns up and says, wait a minute, we agreed that you wouldn't bring any cavalry, you wouldn't bring any army, you wouldn't bring any weapons, so why are these people here? But the Prophet ﷺ reminded him that yes, I am the most honest, I am the most trustworthy, I am the one who does not break his pacts. And if you can see very clearly, these people are not on the inside of Makkah, they are on the outskirts of Makkah, and I will uphold my part of the agreement as long as you also uphold the peace treaty, which is not to prevent us, not to stop us, or cause us any harm, or anything like that. And then he himself, he said, yes, we only know you as the most faithful, and we only know you as Amin and as Sadiq, and therefore we know that we won't do anything which will jeopardize the pact or the treaty that we have made with you. So the Prophet ﷺ, he never betrayed and he never lied, even though the situations did call for deception and betrayal and lying. The Prophet ﷺ very tactfully would always make sure that he never broke any agreement or never lied in any particular situation. And similarly, we need to remember ourselves that although we make agreements with other people as well, that doesn't mean that you remain completely naive ignorant that the other person could still potentially do something to harm you. So it's always good to protect yourself, to safeguard yourself, but that doesn't mean that you completely break off your agreement and you betray the person or lie to the person. So they were there as backup, but they were not on the inside of Makkah, part of the agreement, they were outside of Makkah. And then when the safety was there for the Muslims, the Prophet told them to demount and then get off their horses, relieve their armor and everything and the weapons, and then come safely and soundly into the city of Makkah as well. And whilst they were entering, some Sahaba they started reciting poetry at that time. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he appreciated the poetry as well. Because people were saying that why are you reciting poetry and this is not the right place or the right time. But the Prophet ﷺ, I wanted to remind us that he appreciated art and he appreciated culture. And there is a time and place for art and there is a time and place for culture as well. The Prophet and the Muslims could have been saying the takbir and saying so many other things and reciting verses of the Quran to instill fear into the grace that we're here, what you're going to do. But the poetry has its own dimension, has its own kind of nuance that people appreciate and they understand as well. So the Prophet didn't reject it, he said, no, allow him to express his feelings and his emotions in a correct way as well. So there is a time and a place for art and culture and poetry, but as long as that art and culture gives you something beneficial, it reforms you, enhances you, and it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not that type of art or culture or media that you use which takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which causes your mind to be corrupted or your heart to be corrupted or instills other ideas into your mind as well. So there's no harm in using art and culture and media, but in a productive way and in a positive way which enhances you and brings you closer and not in a negative way. So now they're inside the city of Makkah, and as part of the agreement with the Quraysh is that they leave the Muslims alone, because they're not supposed to prevent them in any way or form, neither are they supposed to hurt them or cause them any particular harm. So the Quraysh and all the leaders of Quraysh decided that they leave Makkah at that time and they go towards the mountains of Makkah. At that time they were very, very close. Now they have been destroyed, but at that time they went and they stood on the mountains of Makkah and they were just observing the Muslims. However, as you know, Abu Sufyan and the other people who were still against the Prophet ﷺ and wanted to use every opportunity to their advantage, what they started doing is that they realized that the Muslims, as they were coming in, those other people in Quraysh, those other people in Makkah would start listening to the Muslims and listening to the message, and they didn't want this to happen. So they started spreading rumors, which hasn't happened before. So the rumor that they started to spread, and they told the other people of Makkah, is that the Muslims, they have a skin disease. And if you approach them, if you talk to them, if you shake their hands or deal with them in any way, you will have the skin disease as well, so you must stay away from them. And similarly, they were trying to say that the Muslims are very, very weak and they are feeble, they'll come and they'll start begging you. So all of these types of rumors, they start spreading wide so that other people who are in Makkah, they are not exposed to Islam and they don't approach the Muslims and they don't approach the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is obviously their tactic to keep the message away from the other people in Makkah. However, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's aware of all of these tactics and he's aware of the rumors that are spreading. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commands all of the Sahaba Ikram and himself included, whilst they are doing the tawaf, and this is why you do the tawaf as well in this particular way. So as these rumors have been spread that the Muslims are weak, they have a skin disease, and they are feeble, whilst the Muslims are doing the tawaf, the Prophet ﷺ orders the Sahaba Ikram to uncover their shoulder. And this is why when you do tawaf, you uncover your shoulder as well, to show all of those people who are on the outskirts of Makkah or on the mountains of Makkah that look, we don't have any disease, we don't have any skin ailments or anything like that, our shoulders are fine, our hands are fine, to show them. And then the second command Prophet ﷺ gave to the Sahaba Ikram was to jog, and that's why we also jog in the first couple of tawaf, don't we? The first tawaf that we do, the first three tawaf that we do, we jog around the Kaaba. And this is to show those Muslims, those non-Muslims and the people of Makkah, the Muslims are not weak, they're not feeble, and they're not barely surviving, but look, they are strong and they are mighty, they are covering their shoulders and they are jogging around the Kaaba. So this was how the Prophet ﷺ combined worship with power as well. And just because you are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Ghiba, Malanga, इसमें कुछ नहीं होना. This is what happens when you show your weakness. You show your weakness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you should be showing your weakness to other people. So this is how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam combines humility and weakness with power as well. That they are being humble before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they are showing their power and might to the non-Muslims. That wait a minute, we don't have this skin disease, we don't have this affliction, and we are strong people as well. So to combine submission and to combine power is a very, very delicate balance, because you are submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, you don't want other people to take advantage of you as well. Because if you are seen to be weak in front of other people, what is their natural reaction that they do? They always take advantage of you and your situation, that, oh, hey, namaz padhna hai, hey, he can see. What's he going to do? How can he do anything to me? However, the submission and the weakness is only towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In front of other people, you must remain upright, you must remain strong, so that people do not overpower you and overcome you and say, wait a minute, I can do anything I want to these people. So it's important to remain strong in front of other people, but show your humility and your submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where it originates, why we remove our ihram over our shoulders, and why we do tawaf, and why we jog, to show those people that we're Muslims, we don't have these elements, and we are not weak as well. However, the next year, the following year, when the Prophet ﷺ returned again, this situation was not there. So the non-Muslims, they didn't have the same rumor still spreading, because the rumor was obviously addressed at that time. But still, the Prophet ﷺ in the following year, he mentioned to Sayyidina Umar that you should still uncover your shoulder, because this is part of my sunnah, and this sunnah will be there to the end of time as well. And this is sunnah not just because the Prophet ﷺ has done it, but to remind us that Muslims, we are people of power. Yes, we are people who submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we are nothing, but to remind us that you have to keep yourself upright. You have to stand tall and you have to stand strong in the dunya if you are to succeed, and if the message of Islam is to succeed as well. Hamesha, say, if you're going to be walking everywhere, people are going to take advantage of you. So that's why it's important that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you show your humility and submission, but to the rest of the dunya, and still in a humble way, in a fashion, you still remain upright and strong as well. So this is why we still follow the sunnah even today, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had commanded that this is my sunnah, and this will be there till the day of Qiyamah. You will still keep your right shoulder covered, and you will still jog around the Kaaba the way that I ordered you to do, and the way that the Sahaba did it as well. So this is why it's important to understand the seerah as well, because if we start to understand the tawaf, we start to understand why we do certain things in a certain way, because everything has a context and a reason as well, and it provides you vital lessons as well. So after the Umrah, what the Prophet ﷺ did is that he had a banquet where he called all of the non-Muslims. Just where you remember the first time he was calling everybody to Nabuwa, he called his immediate family members for a banquet, for a meal, and for a dinner. He did it once, and then he did it the second time again. So this is a way of inviting people around a meal and for you to share the message with them as well. Not in a hostile manner, but in a manner which is nice and comfortable and people are enjoying themselves. So the Prophet ﷺ, he wants to remove these hostilities. He wants to remove all of these misunderstandings, and he wants to reconcile with these people. So he still has hope for these people. So even though people in your life may be very hostile towards you, maybe arrogant towards you, violent towards you, you should still have hope for them. Still have hope for them, because look at what they have done. They have exiled the Prophet, they have done the Battle of Badr, the Battle of Uhud, the Battle of Khandaq, so many things they have done to try to defeat Islam, and now when the Prophet is there amongst them, he's still trying to work with them, he's still trying to coexist with them, he's still trying to reconcile the differences with them and saying, come, let's come together, and this is the message of Islam where it brings us together under the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he makes a banquet, and he invites all of the leaders of Quraysh, he invites all of the people of Makkah to come. However, as you know, that because due to their arrogance and their stubbornness, the leaders of Makkah and the leaders of Quraysh, they declined the offer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then they remind him that a part of the treaty and the truce is that you can come here into Makkah and you can do your Umrah for 3 days, and after 3 days you have to leave. So the Prophet ﷺ, he hears this, and the Sahaba Ikram, they get quite vexed. They think, wait a minute, we're here, we'll do whatever we want, you can't stop us. And this is the natural reaction of some kind. So, but the Prophet ﷺ remembers that, look, he has made a promise and a treaty with them, and therefore he will always uphold his promises and treaties with all of those people. So he reminds the Sahaba Ikram to remain calm, and he makes them calm, removes them from the situation. And then even though they have been declined, the invitation has been declined, and the Quraysh are still doing their rumors and getting into mischief, the Prophet ﷺ remains peaceful in that first year after the peace treaty. Then he leaves peacefully as well. So the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to remember is that bring people together. We all have differences. You have differences within your family. You have differences within your khandan. You have differences within your community, within your society. These differences will always be there. The way that I perceive something is not the same way that you perceive something. The way that I do something is not the same way that you like to do something. So everybody's adat is different. But due to these differences, we should not divide our communities and our families. We should try to come together and reconcile our differences. And after all of these battles and these tribulations and trials, the Prophet ﷺ is still trying to do what? Bring the people together, unite them again, reconcile the differences as well. So try to keep the sunnah alive of the Prophet ﷺ. And so, after the Umrah has been performed, the Prophet ﷺ is about to leave, and when he does leave, he writes a letter to Khalid ibn Walid. Remember, Khalid ibn Walid was there in the Battle of Uhud, and he's the one who took some of the army. They went around the mountain of Uhud, 23 kilometers, and attacked the Muslims from behind. Khalid ibn Walid is the same man who went to intercept the Muslims in the 6th year of Hijrah when the Muslims were coming to perform their Umrah. So at every time an incident, Khalid ibn Walid, he's a man of great military skill, and he's used to these kind of expeditions and leading and leadership. And the Prophet ﷺ, even though he has been against Islam, against the Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ, he appreciates the skill that Khalid ibn Walid has, the experience that Khalid ibn Walid has as well. So just because somebody may be your enemy, just because somebody may be your foe, somebody may not be a Muslim, doesn't mean you completely reject them and ignore them. If they have a skill, if they have a talent, you should appreciate that. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. He appreciated that military skill, that zeal of Khalid ibn Walid, and he wrote a letter to Khalid ibn Walid that what has prevented you from coming to Islam? What has prevented you from coming to Islam? So this is the content of the message. Oh Khalid, it is such a wonder how a man of your mind can be so late in embracing Islam. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said to him, to his brother. He said, where is Khalid? And he said to his brother, where is Khalid? Find Khalid. And then when his brother went to Khalid, he said to him, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, what has delayed you from coming to Islam? Because you are a man of greatness, you are a man of great skill, great talent. So we should, and the Prophet ﷺ also gave the message that if you come to Islam, we will give you a great place and a great status where you can use your skill for your betterment. You can use your skill to better Islam, to better the message of Islam as well. So the Prophet ﷺ here is doing what? He's appreciating the skills and the capabilities of other people as well. People are very, very talented and they're non-Muslims. But unless you appreciate their skills, they will never come to you and they'll never listen to your message. But if you're always thinking, kafir, how will they ever come to us? Appreciate them and their skills and their talents, and then say to them, look, you can do this for humanity, you can do this for mankind, you can do this and this and this. And because they have that skill and they want to share that skill, and they will see that this is the best way that we can share the skill with the rest of mankind as well. So this is what the Prophet is doing. So we should do this with non-Muslims as well as do it with our own people as well. Look at their skills, look at their abilities, appreciate them, and then tell them that they can use it in a more productive manner by coming to Islam, by helping the deen through media, through other means and modes as well. So this is what the Prophet does, and sends this letter to Khalid. And Khalid receives this letter, and he starts pondering and thinking and reflecting on what the Prophet is saying. And he realizes that every time he went to battle with the Prophet in the Badr, in Uhud, in Khandaq, every time they were defeated, even though in the battle of Uhud they became triumphant and they overcame the Muslims, but they still hadn't succeeded in their plan, which was to kill Muslims, to kill Islam, to kill the messenger. So they still in one way were unsuccessful. So he starts to think that I have so much skill, I have so much talent, and throughout all of these battles, the Muslims were still triumphant. And they still had success, there must be something with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There must be some form of truth that has prevented me to become triumphant over him. So he starts to think about all of these things, but how does he start to think? When the messenger appreciates his talent. So people start thinking about Islam, but only once you appreciate them and you approach them in the right way. And this is what Khalid starts thinking and pondering, and finally he thinks that wait a minute, Muslims are on haqq, and what the Prophet ﷺ has achieved and success can only be if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with him and if he is the true messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once he comes to this realization, then he makes this intention to go to the Prophet ﷺ and to accept the Shahada at the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But along the way, he meets Uthman ibn Talha, and he tells him, look, I'm going to the messenger, and I'm finally going to accept the Islam because this is the right thing. Then he brings him alongside as well. Look, that one invitation, one simple letter, Khalid is coming, a great military man, and then he's bringing Uthman ibn Talha, and then also they will bring Amr bin As as well. Remember, Amr bin As was that same man who went to Abyssinia and tried to convince the king of Naxos at that time that leave the Muslims, don't allow them to stay here. So he was very, very articulate in his speech and his conversation and his negotiations as well. So then they see Amr bin As and they call him, say, look, you come with us as well, and they convince him just by that one simple invitation. We can do something similar as well. Just invite people, appreciate them as human beings and their talents and their skills. Once they incline towards Islam, you don't know, they may bring their family, they may bring their brothers and sisters, their mother and father, their own children, and this is how all of their needs will come into your account because you have invited them to the deen. So that was one simple appreciation of the Prophet ﷺ is bringing the greatness of Khalid ibn Walid. And who does not know Khalid ibn Walid and the things that he conquered and the triumphs that he brought to Islam? He's known as the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a title given to him by the Prophet ﷺ. Amr bin As is the one who conquered Egypt. There's so many successes that were brought by these people. And when these three people came to Medina al-Munawwara, the Prophet ﷺ said, Makkah is sending, he used to address the people of Medina, that Makkah is sending you the apple of their eyes. The apple of their eyes is what? Is to show you that these are the greatest people of Makkah at that time, and Makkah is gifting you this whole people of Medina. So just by that one simple invitation, and by asking him to think and making him reflect on everything the Prophet ﷺ stood for, he came to Islam, Uthman bin Talha came to Islam, and Amr bin As came to Islam, and they protected Islam, and they furthered Islam, the message of Islam to a huge degree. So the Prophet ﷺ, when Khalid ibn Walid comes to him, he accepts obviously the Shahada, and then he puts his hand on the hand of the Prophet ﷺ, and further to that, the Prophet prays for Khalid ibn Walid, that Allah forgive all his past sins. Because think about it, he had this enmity towards Muslims, towards Islam and the Messenger, but the Prophet ﷺ is saying that whatever he has done before his Shahada now, forgive them. And everything was forgiven, because when you accept Islam, you submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your past sins are forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Amr bin As and Uthman ibn Talha as well, they also say, what about us as well? And the Prophet ﷺ reassures them that yes, whatever you may have done, whatever wrongs that you may have done, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipes all of those away, and this is a new beginning, a fresh start for you, and now this is the time for you to really do that which is good and live your life in accordance to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So invite people, make Islam attractive to them through your character, appreciate other people and their talents, and you can slowly just do yourself and appreciate other people, bring more people to Islam, and the skills that they bring to Islam will further Islam and strengthen Islam and help Islam as well, the way Khalid ibn Walid did, the way Amr bin As and Uthman ibn Talha did as well. So this is the first thing, the second thing I wanted to share with you. So after the Umrah, which is the first aspect of the 7th Hijrah, and then the conversion of new Muslims and new Muslims coming to Islam, namely Khalid ibn Walid and Amr bin As and Uthman ibn Talha. Then the third thing that I wanted to share with you is that the Prophet ﷺ doesn't restrict his message and his mission to the people of Makkah and to the people of Medina and to the Arabian Peninsula. He wants to share the message internationally as well. And Islam is not just a message it's not just a religion for Pakistanis or Indians or Bangladeshis or people who are living here on the British Isles. It is a message for all of mankind because it has come from Rabbul Alameen. It has come via the Rahmatul Lil Alameen for all of mankind. And therefore we have a duty as well, not to just keep Islam to ourselves, because we think we own Islam, and Islam is for us, and the way we live our Islam, this is the only way, but Islam is for us to share with all the people that are around us. But you can only share Islam when you yourself are the living embodiment of Islam. So make sure that you are a living example of Islam. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ is doing in the 7th Hijrah, the 3rd mission that he has. If you look carefully, everything is planned. From the peace treaty to Muslims coming for them to bring their Umrah, and then the message spreading internationally as well. All of these things are part of the plan of Prophet ﷺ. And if you want Islam to spread here in the UK, you need to understand who these people are, their customs, their culture, what makes them tick, what they like, what they dislike, and then live with them, coexist with them, and then show them the beauty of your religion, appreciate who they are, and slowly they will themselves come to Islam. You need to learn from the Seerah and adopt the Seerah the way the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba Ikram as well. So now, Prophet ﷺ is spreading the message internationally. In this day and age, it's very easy. You post on Facebook or on Twitter or put something on the website, make a video, it goes viral, it goes throughout the world. But at that time, Prophet ﷺ wanted to teach us that international relationships are very, very important as well. And our message is not confined to your local area, but also to all those people far and wide. So the Prophet ﷺ is trying to spread the message, but at the same time strengthen Islam and make it be seen as an international power. Because remember, at the beginning it was nothing. When he went to Medina, he slowly formed into a community, and finally he was recognized as a formidable force. And now internationally people need to recognize it, and internationally they need to realize that this is a force which is a powerful force as well, and which will always stand for that which is right and forbid that which is wrong. This is the mandate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we encourage good to all of mankind, not just good to our family members and our brothers and sisters and our cousins. We encourage good to all of mankind, and we forbid evil to all of mankind. How can we forbid evil if we don't even know who the next country is, if who our community members are, what our society is doing? So it's our duty to make relationships with locally as well as internationally as well, so that we can fulfill our mission. So the Prophet ﷺ wants to grow the message of Islam internationally as well as the power of Islam as well. So for this, he sends messengers, and he sends 14 messengers to 14 countries, to 14 kings, because at that time the main people were situated in these particular areas: Persia, Rome, Abyssinia, Ethiopia. All these were the central places of authority for those people who were not Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ, what he does is, before sending out these ambassadors and these messengers, he makes sure that he trains every single one of them. And he tells them to go, you go and learn the Jewish language, you go and learn Farsi, you go and learn Italian, you go and learn this, you go and learn that, so that when they go there, they're not struggling, they can actually represent Islam in the most beautiful of manners, and they can communicate and they can engage with the people of that area and that place. So this is how the Prophet ﷺ is planning effectively to send 14 messages to 14 kings in 14 languages, and for that he prepares the Muslims, and prepares and chooses those Muslims of skill, those Muslims of talent, and tells them to learn and study, and then they learn the language and the culture and the custom of that area, and that's when they go prepared. Just like they went to Abyssinia, they went prepared with the language, with the verses of the Quran and everything. Similarly, if you want the message to spread here in the UK, and for it to be effective, you have to learn the language of the land. If you can't even communicate, you say, yes please, no please, yes please, all the time, people are just going to say, what does he know what he's talking about? How can you convince people if you can't communicate with them? You can only convince people when you can communicate with them in an articulate manner, in a coherent manner. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ is doing, and we need to do that as well. Learn the language, learn the custom, learn the culture, and then communicate with them, become ambassadors of your religion, and then you will see them compliant towards Islam. We have failed at the first thing that we can't even communicate, and we want them, Allah करे सारे मुसलमानों के मदीने में आज़ाद ये चीज़ ये मुसलमानों के लिए लेकिन कलमा नहीं पढ़ते. That's what we say all the time. end of the day come to Islam, we have to communicate with them. Shaykh Qutb is not going to tell them what the real Islam is. Other people are not going to tell them you, because you are the living embodiment of Islam, so therefore you have to communicate. It's your duty, the onus is upon you to share that message in the most beautiful of ways. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ is doing, finding skillful people, talented people, teaching them, making them learn, and then sending them as ambassadors and sharing that message, that international message with all of these people as well. So therefore, Deen is very, very closely connected with the dunya as well. If you want your deen to be successful, you have to be successful in your dunya as well. If you're only successful in your dunya and you don't apply all of those skills in your deen will not be successful as well. And similarly, if you're only successful in your deen, you are worshipping your ulama and everything, but you are not successful in the dunya, then you are failing. So therefore Islam is the balance and the combination of your deen and your dunya. So the Prophet ﷺ has taught them the deen of what Islam says and everything, and now telling them, learn this communication skill, learn this, combine these skills, and then go out and spread the deen as well as the dunya as well, and how to be upright, how to be honest, how to be trustworthy. And this is what we are lacking. So you have to have a balance. You have to straddle both complexities of who you are and where you are, the deen as well as the dunya, if you want you to succeed, if you want the Islam to succeed as well. So the Prophet ﷺ has sent messages to all of these countries, 14 messages. And on the website, if you go onto the Prophet ﷺ section, you will see that I've placed a whole booklet which is all the letters that the Prophet ﷺ had sent and how he addressed the particular kings of that time and the content of those letters as well. So if you do get a chance, make sure you go and you look that up as well. So, however, the Prophet ﷺ has sent the best, chosen the best of the Sahaba Ikram, the most talented of Sahaba Ikram, and sent them as representative, as ambassadors of Islam to go to these people. So alhamdulillah, 13 messages they go, and they deliver their messages to the kings of that time. And when the Prophet ﷺ addresses the kings at that time, and the leaders of that time, he doesn't say, oh, who do you think you are, I am the messenger. No, he gives them their due status and their due maqam. Because this is the dunyavi maqam that they have achieved in the dunya. So the Prophet ﷺ, he made sure that when he addresses them in a way which will make them open to the invitation of Islam. However, if you don't even address people in the right way and say, I don't acknowledge you as the queen, you are nothing, but I want you to come to Islam, nobody's going to accept Islam and say, wait a minute, who do you think you are? So this is important to understand the psychology, the mentality of people, and also how society works and functions. So the Prophet ﷺ, he begins in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says, this is a letter coming from the messenger of Allah ta'ala to the king of Persia, to the king of Abyssinia, to the king of Rome. This is how he addresses them, and he speaks to them in that particular way with respect as well. So if you want people to come to Islam, don't say, oi Goria, don't say, oi Kafir, don't like that. They won't come to you, because they'll just have a barrier and say, wait a minute, he doesn't even respect me as an individual, as a human being, and he's already judging me, so why should I go to Islam? Why should I go and listen to what he's saying? So it's very, very important that the way you address, the way you behave, the way you talk is effective, and in terms of the message that you share with them as well. So 13 messengers, they have shared the message with all of the kings in their area, and however, one messenger does not return, and that messenger is killed. And he's the messenger that the Prophet ﷺ sent to the kingdom of Ghassasina. So if you look at the map of Saudi Arabia, one day Saudi Arabia is Makkah, and there's Medina, then above Medina there's Tabuk, and above Tabuk, and there is this area called Mu'ta, which is the Ghassasina area. So this is where the Messenger had sent. The Prophet had sent the messenger to the king of that area to invite him to Islam, to invite him to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the messages as well, the Prophet had given them a reminder as well, that if you do not heed to the message of Islam, then all of the sins of the people that follow you will be on your shoulders. Remember, the people who follow their leader, whatever the leader says and dictates, is the things that they do. So the Prophet is telling them of the glad tidings of Jannah, of the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the messenger of Allah. At the same time reminding them that you have a duty to investigate and realize the truth and search and haqq that is with me, and indeed I am a messenger of Allah. And if you deny it, then all of the bad deeds king of this area, the Sassin area, what he does is he actually kills the messenger the Prophet ﷺ sends. So they were sent with peace. They were sent not to cause any havoc or fitna or fasad or anything like that, or to cause an uprising or revolt, simply to go and deliver a message to the people, to the leaders of that area. And the Prophet ﷺ had also made a seal as well. That's why if you see this brown drink and it says Muhammad at the bottom and the Rasul and Allah at the top, that was the actual seal the Prophet ﷺ had commissioned. And when he put that on and he signed that on every single letter, because he realized that if a king, you see today as well, that if you go and you take a normal ordinary piece of paper and you write with your hand, or you type it up and you just give it to a prime minister, you give it to the queen, they will look at it maybe once and they'll just throw it into the bin. They won't give it any respect or honor because they think it's just an ordinary letter. However, if you have a letter which is signed, which is sealed, and it's delivered by a person, then it gives you this extra sense of, wait a minute, this is the person who is serious, this is the person who's come from a civilized country and a nation as well. So the Prophet ﷺ understood all of these things as well. And that's why he commissioned the stamp, and that's why you have that Muhammad at the bottom and the Rasul and Allah at the top in that particular way. You see those particular stamps. So he had that signed and sealed on every single letter, and that's why when the kings received it, they realized that this is coming from an official person, from an official authority to me, and is directly addressing me as well. So they appreciated all of these things. So when you go and talk to people, look at who they are, their maqam, their status, and address them in a particular manner which is befitting. Otherwise they will just ignore you and they will reject you and say, Puja, anyway, going back to the man, the Sahabi who went to the Sassin area, he was killed by the man, by the leader of that area. And the only reason that why he was killed is because on every letter, the Prophet ﷺ began with the name of Allah, and then he said that this is a letter coming from the messenger of Allah. And this king, because he was pride, he had lots of pride, and he was arrogant, and he was very, very stubborn, he said, how dare he put his name before my name? This is the statement that he said, that how can Muhammad, at that time we didn't acknowledge him as the messenger, how can he put his name before my name, and let alone put the name of God, any God before my name, because he considered himself to be God. Because remember at that time, pagan rituals, all of this worship, idol worship is still there in all these other countries as well, worshiping statues and idols. So he considered himself to be a God, and he said, how dare he put his name before my name? So what he did is, rather than send the messenger back and say, we reject your message, or send a message back to the messenger, he beheaded the messenger that the Prophet ﷺ had sent. And then this message, this information was shared with the Prophet ﷺ, that the 13 messengers have come back. They've come back safely. However, the 14th messenger which you have sent, he was beheaded, he was martyred, and he was killed. And they are now preparing for war. So the king of that area, because he was so angry and so frustrated that how dare he put his name before my name, and who does he think he is? I am the king, and I'm also God as well. This is one of his beliefs. So he said, I'm going to go and I'm going to destroy the Muslims, destroy their messenger, and destroy everything that they stand for. So this was his plan and his preparation. So the Prophet ﷺ realized that this was his plan, and also, had the Prophet ﷺ remained quiet, then this would have set a very, very dangerous precedent in the Arabian Peninsula, that the Prophet would send a messenger, we can kill him, and he won't do anything about it. However, this was a citizen of the Muslim Ummah. This was a citizen of the Muslim Ummah, and every citizen mattered with the Prophet ﷺ, not just those people who were close to him and near to him, but every citizen was an equal citizen before the eye of Allah and before the eye of the Prophet ﷺ. And therefore, qisas was due upon those people who had unjustly killed this man, who only went there for the purposes of peace and spreading this message of Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ ordered the Sahaba Ikram to get together, and this is not an ugly time. The Prophet ordered the Sahaba Ikram that you will go in the morning, you will go to this area, the Sassin area, and you will go and you will seek vengeance for these people, because one, you will seek revenge, and the second thing that you will seek is to defend the Muslims, because they are actually preparing to come to us. So the Prophet ﷺ tells them at Maghrib and at Fajr time, 3,000 Sahaba Ikram. 3,000 Sahaba Ikram, they are prepared for war, they are prepared for battle, they are prepared to seek revenge, and they are also prepared to defend Islam in the city of Medina al-Munawwara at that time. So the Prophet ﷺ, he makes the leader of those 3,000 Sahaba around the army. The first leader the Prophet ﷺ places is Haris. Remember Zayd bin Haris? He was the slave of the Prophet ﷺ that he adopted and he freed, and he put his father in, said, I don't want to go with you, I want to stay with the Prophet. So Zayd bin Haris, he was almost the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ, very, very close to him and near to him. He was only at the tender age between 16 to 18. He was made the commander-in-chief, the leader of the entire army. And then the Prophet ﷺ, after him, said that Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, that if anything happens to Zayd, then you will be the next in command. And then the third in command was Abdullah ibn Rawah. So these are the three people the Prophet ﷺ ordered that you will be the leader, you will be the second leader, and you will be the third leader. And although the majority of the Jews were expelled from Medina because of their breaking of the constitution and the pact, some Jews who did not break the constitution, they were still allowed to remain in Medina at that time because they were normal and they were living as normal human beings and normal citizens. Some of the Jews went to the Prophet ﷺ, those who were well versed in the art of the Torah, and they approached the Prophet ﷺ and they said to him, the only reason why you or any other prophet has ever made one person a leader and then also a succession like one leader, the second leader, and the third leader is because he knows that the first one will be martyred, and the second one will be martyred, and the third one will be martyred. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to scare the Muslims that, wait a minute, because the Prophet has chosen you, and he's chosen the second person, and he's chosen the third person, the rule of God is that the prophets, they know what is about to happen in the future. And therefore Zayd, you will be killed, and you will be killed. So he's trying to persuade them, trying to push them away and make them realize that don't go to this battle because you will die and you will get killed. However, these people, their hearts were connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were not fearful of whatever was there for them in the future. And they had firm faith and they had firm love for the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala. So they remained strong and said, whatever the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala has mentioned, we will do that. Whatever happens, we are with the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So similarly, in your lifetime as well, when you have made an azm, you have made a resolve, an intention to do something, some people will come and say, this will happen to you, that will happen to you. Why? To dissuade you, to keep you away from your greater mission to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to achieve something, to better yourself or to protect Islam. When you do these kind of things, what will happen to your children, what will happen to your wealth, what will happen to this and this and this, try to persuade you. However, these people whose heart was firmly connected to Allah and the messenger, they remain firm and they remain strong and say, whatever happens, we will proceed with it as well. So the Sahaba Ikram, they leave after Fajr, and 3,000 of them, they are going on a 1,000-kilometer journey. So over 1,000 kilometers, 3,000 Sahaba Ikram traveling the distance of 1,000 kilometers. Imagine that, and imagine the preparation and the steadfastness and firmness that they had to have in order to reach that particular place. So 1,000 kilometers they are traveling in the baking sun in the Arabian Peninsula. And when they reach the place of the Sassin area, which is the area where the battle took place, the Battle of Mu'tah, as I mentioned, then they see that there's 200,000 people who are there. 200,000. Originally, the king of the Sassin area, he had 100,000 people ready to kill the Muslims. But then he was fearful and he said, wait a minute, what if something else happens? What if they come with more people? So then he speaks to the Roman emperor and he gets an additional 100,000 soldiers. 200,000 soldiers are there. And from those 200,000 people, 50,000 of them have horses as well. So 50,000 horsemen, 150,000 soldiers are there. So the Muslims, when they arrive there, especially Zayd bin Harith, who is the leader of these 3,000 Sahaba, they have three options. They just have three options. The first option is to return back to the Prophet ﷺ and explain the situation. However, all of them, they rejected this because they realized that this would not be the right option because they would be disobeying the command of the Prophet ﷺ. The second option was to send a messenger back and ask for backup, ask for additional support, and look, we need more people. This 3,000 versus 200,000. So this is the second option that we have to ask for more support. And the third option was to face the enemy and remain steadfast and remain firm with whatever that comes before them. And this is the option that they chose because their hearts were firm, they were closely collected to Allah subhanahu subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they knew that whatever would happen would be the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they chose the third option, not to run away, not to return, not to ask for extra support, because they knew there was no other Muslims in Medina. These were the Muslims in Medina who could go and protect Islam and protect the city of Medina. So they decided to go ahead. However, as you know, up until now, we've studied in the Seerah, everything that the Sahaba Ikram did and everything the Prophet ﷺ did was always planned. It wasn't just sit at everything was pre-planned and organized. The Sahaba Ikram, especially Zayd bin Haris, he also made a plan as well. He realized that if 3,000 come in front of 200,000, they will be completely mutilated and destroyed. 200,000 people will just come, they'll kill them utterly in an open area. So he said, we need to go to an area which is enclosed, so we need to go inside the city, because inside the city we will have protection from the right and from the left. The houses will be on the right, the houses will be on the left, some people will be on the back of us as well. So we'll have protection from all these sides, from right and the left and also from the back, and the only thing that we will have is people to contend with from in front of us. So this way, we will have to contend with 200,000 people in one go. We can slowly go through the enemy bit by bit, bit by bit. So this is the plan that they devised, and this is the way that they realized that they could protect themselves. So they went into the town of the Sassin area, and they realized this is where the battle used to take place, and this is where the Muslims started to battle. So the people of that area, the Sassin soldiers and also the people of Rome, they realized, wait a minute, we will go into the open area to kill them, and now they've come to the town, so they had to change their tactics as well. So what they did, they couldn't do anything because the streets are so narrow. They would only put an X amount of people in one street, in one alley, and they would only have support people at the back as well. And the Muslims, as courageous as they were, as fierce as they were going through them like a knife goes through butter. And after 6 days of battle, not 1 day, not 2 days, 6 days of continuous battle, 3,000 versus 200,000 people, 6 days of continuous battle, hundreds and thousands of the non-Muslims were killed, and only, listen to this, only 12 Sahaba Ikram were killed. After 6 days, 3,000 people versus 200,000, only 12 Sahaba Ikram were killed. Why? Due to their planning, ridiculous planning, making sure that they would protect themselves, and they had this additional support and extra support as well. And then what happened? The non-Muslims, they realized they need to change their tactics again. So they started climbing the houses, and they started to infiltrate the Muslims from behind, and they started doing lots of different things. In between all of this, the Prophet ﷺ in the city of Medina, he is seeing everything. He is seeing everything. And not only is he seeing everything, but he's telling the Sahaba Ikram, this is what's happening now. This is what's happening now. This is what's happening now. The Prophet is there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown him everything that is happening, and the distances have been shortened, and the Sahaba Ikram, they are listening to everything that is happening live as it is happening and transpiring. But the Romans and the people of Assassin, they've changed their tactics, and they realize that we need to get that man who has the flag of Islam. And the flag of Islam was in the hand of Zayd bin Haris. Remember, he was the commander-in-chief. So they said, if we can get him, then after the flag falls, then we'll be able to overpower them quite easily. So they go and they attack Zayd bin Haris. And he was the very close, he was originally a slave, yes, but he was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ. And they cut off his right arm, they cut off his left arm, and finally they killed Zayd bin Haris. And then as soon as Zayd bin Haris is killed, the Prophet ﷺ was telling the Sahaba Ikram that he's become a shaheed, and the angels are taking him to the heaven. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ is described in every single detail of the Sahaba Ikram. And then the Prophet ﷺ, remember the second man that he has placed, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, then he takes the flag of Islam, then he stands up, and then he continuously fights, and then he's also killed as well. And the Prophet ﷺ is telling all of these things to the Sahaba Ikram, that now my uncle has been killed. First my adopted son, how close he was, then his very own uncle has been killed as well. And then Abdullah ibn Rawah, he takes the flag as well, and then he is also killed as well in the way of Islam. So although the Prophet ﷺ chose these people, and he knew what would happen, that he would be killed, and he would be killed, and he would be killed, what the Jew wanted to do, he wanted to use it in the wrong way, in a negative way, to dissuade Muslims. However, the Prophet ﷺ said that in Islam you need sacrifice, and you need to go and to defend the Muslims before these 200,000 people. Imagine had they come to Medina, what they would have done to the entire city of Medina. So it required the sacrifice of the Muslim. So remember, up until now, Khalid ibn Walid, the great military man in Badr and in Uhud, all these incidences, he has accepted Islam. Remember, in the 7th Hijrah, and he's part of this army as well. Prophet ﷺ could have chosen him to be the leader at that time, but he wanted to teach him something very, very important, that leadership has to be earned. Just because you have a talent doesn't mean by default you are the most eligible and you are the most worthy of that particular thing. You have to earn it as well. So these Sahaba Ikram, Zayd bin Haris, Ja'far bin Abi Talib, Abdullah bin Rawah, they had earned it, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ gave that particular order. And now Khalid bin Walid realized that there is no other person to lead them, and all the Sahaba Ikram, they agreed that you would be our leader. So then he became the leader, and then through his experience and through his expertise and through his tactics, he devised different plans to attack the non-Muslims at that time, but at the same time he wanted to retreat as well, because he realized that 200,000, they would kill 1,000, 2,000, 5, 10, 15, but it was their home, their territory, and they would still have more backup. So Khalid ibn Walid, very tactfully, is attacking them, at the same time he's retreating as well, but making sure that they are not attacking the Muslims as they are retreating. So he uses his skills, he uses his ability and his talent to protect the Muslims and to take revenge for the killing that they had done, but at the same time for them to retreat safely back into the city of Medina as well. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's describing the heroic acts of Khalid ibn Walid and saying that he is the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why even today we remember him as Suyuf min Suyufillah, that he's the sword from the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this was the love of the title given to him by the Prophet ﷺ for his courageousness, for his fierceness in his battle, and for his planning and how he saved all the Muslims. He saved over 2,500 Muslims from being killed through his tactics, and through his warfare, and through his skill. And finally the Muslims came back. And when they entered into Medina, some people were thinking, they have been defeated. However, the Prophet ﷺ came, and he came running outside the city of Medina, and he embraced Khalid ibn Walid, and he embraced all of the Sahaba and said, "We have not been defeated. You have not been defeated, we have gone, and you have sought qisas for that man who was killed. And inshallah, in the near future, we will return and we will conquer." And this is exactly what happens. The Muslims do go back, Khalid ibn Walid does go back, and they do conquer Persia, and they do conquer Constantinople, and they do conquer all of those countries at that time as well. So in the 7th Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ achieves a huge amount of success in terms of returning to Makkah and performing the Tawaf. New people, Muslims coming into Islam as well, the message being spread internationally to Islam as well, and the Muslims defending the city of Medina and taking revenge, and also making sure that no bad precedent instead where anybody can think that they can come and destroy Muslims or Islam as well. So all of these things are very, very important for us to reflect upon. It's important for you to combine your deen and your dunya, appreciate people and their skills and their abilities, and then through you have to become the living embodiment of the message of Islam and incline people towards Islam the way the Prophet ﷺ did, the way the Sahaba Ikram did, by learning the language, engaging and communicating and being the best that they could be. Inshallah, we have a few more lectures remaining and only 5 more years left in the physical life of the Prophet ﷺ before he returns